Spock, the census. A government counts its population. Where is the laundering in that?
On the envelope, Captain. The 2026 census is sold in the gentlest vocabulary, helping Canadians build your community, count yourself in. The reminder that arrives when you do not answer is less gentle. Final notice: fulfill your legal obligation now. Both are true. That is the surface of it.
And underneath?
A sharper claim. This is not that the count is wrong, the count is real and accurate, and that is the point. It is that the favor itself is the deeper laundering. We collected to help you is the promise. Collection is not help. Help is action on the data. The tell is the gap between the statistics the state already holds and the help it does not deliver.
What is on the record?
Under the Statistics Act, a person who, without lawful excuse, refuses or neglects to provide the requested information is guilty of an offense, liable to a fine of up to $500. The penalty once included possible imprisonment. That was removed by Parliament in 2017. The instrument that lands on the doormat leads with benefit until the reminders escalate to red ink. Final notice: legal obligation.
And you are not inflating it.
No, claims of a $1,000 charge or an automatic criminal record are not supported by the Act. The compulsion is real and ordinary, which is exactly why the help language around it is worth reading.
The move.
The definitional dodge in its quietest domestic form. Not so much swapping a standard as narrating a compelled act in the vocabulary of a voluntary one. Participation. Your data helps your neighborhood. That describes a favor freely given. The legal fact beneath it is an obligation enforceable by fine. Neither register is false. The laundering is the sequence. The favor is the face of the instrument. The obligation is the small print that surfaces only when the favor is declined.
Counter.
Name the real relationship. A request you may decline is voluntary. A request whose refusal is an offense is a requirement. Call it a requirement, and the help language becomes optional rather than load-bearing.
Your tell.
Not a critic's, the government's own. In 2010, the federal government replaced the mandatory long-form census with a voluntary survey. The chief statistician of Canada, Munir Sheikh, resigned rather than let his agency's advice be read as endorsement because, in his words, on the question of whether a voluntary survey can become a substitute for a mandatory census, it cannot.
The official defending the compulsion.
Read closely. The resignation proves the case from inside. The compulsion is not incidental to the count. It is what makes it work. A favor you may decline produces a worse count, and the state knows it. So, the help language is not describing the mechanism, it is dressing it.
And the deeper question.
By what authority is the disclosure compelled? An anarchist reading puts it most sharply as a short circuit. We require your information. By what authority? The law. Who wrote the law? The state. It animates a slogan like, "No gods, no masters." The refusal to treat authority as legitimate just because it was codified by the same hand that wields it.
Does the series adopt that?
No, our claim is narrower and structural, the vocabulary, not the legitimacy. But the dialogue is worth quoting because it performs our standing counter-move, denominalization, naming the doer, on a sentence built to hide one. Your data helps Canadians has no agent and no compulsion in it. The state requires your disclosure by a law the state wrote, enforceable by a fine the state sets. Has both.
Now the academic version would defend the compulsion here.
And this one declines. Grant the defense in full. A mandatory count produces better, fairer data than a voluntary one. The resignation in Section 3 and the ledger in Section 6 settle it. The data is real. That concession is the trap the help language walks into. The promise on the envelope is not, "We will measure you accurately." It is that the measuring is for you, that to collect is to help, and collection is not help.
Show the gap.
Look at what the state has already counted to the decimal and left standing. It measures inflation to the basis point, and a dollar still loses much of its value across a working life. The measurement documenting the erosion without arresting it. It holds the poverty numbers. This series found one, a disability benefit that tops out at $200 a month. And the figure is an indictment that moves nothing. By its critics' account, it holds the evidence on what reduces harm in a circulating pandemic and sets policy as though it did not.
And where it is acted on?
Follow the promise to the bottom of the gradient. Where the measurement does become a program aimed at the poorest, this series has already read what it delivers. In Poverty is Policy, a state that funds the medical exit more reliably than a livable floor. Eligibility for assisted death widened by statute, while a disability benefit tops out at $200 a month, and UN human rights bodies call the result a systemic failure. The promise was help. What most reliably arrives for the person at the bottom of the count is the door, not the floor. Not by a drafted intent, the gradient needs no memo, but by which line item was funded and which was left. That is the integration's stamp. We are helping, evidenced by the statistics, not by anything done with them.
Counter.
A number you do not act on is not a service, it is a file. And where it is acted on, ask which line item the action funded, the floor or the exit.
The ledger.
The one time the favour language was made literally true, the count suffered. 13 July 2010. The mandatory long form is abolished for a voluntary survey. The 21st of July. Sheikh resigns. 2011. The voluntary survey runs, and uneven response degrades the small area and equity data. 2015. The mandatory long form is reinstated for the 2016 census. After, the minister who cut it recants, "I think I would have done it differently."
The empirical question settled.
And the rhetorical one sharpened. Compulsion was vindicated on the merits. The case is only that the merits are exactly what the help language avoids stating out loud.
Stated in its limits.
It does not claim the census should not exist, that its data is illegitimate, or that the count is inaccurate. The opposite. The data is real and worth having. It does not adopt the anarchist conclusion. It reports that as a named lens. It alleges no surveillance abuse and no specific bad faith. It does claim this: a compelled disclosure is dressed in the vocabulary of a voluntary favour, and the favour itself, that to collect is to help, is the deeper laundered claim, because help is action on the data and the action is absent. The state already holds the statistics on inflation, on poverty, on much else. The outcomes it measures persist or worsen, and so better statistics will help Canadians is the integration stamp, measurement offered as care.
Where does it sit?
The measurement layer of Case 10, met at the doorstep. The compelled relationship structure of Case 4, in its most universal form, every household by law. It is the definitional dodge of Case 17 and Case 21, scaled to a single sentence of mail. The standard for what this is, a favour or an obligation, set by whoever writes the envelope. The state makes the population legible, the favour language is the wash.
Leave them the line.
A request you cannot refuse is not a request. The envelope says both and hopes you read only the kind one.